Hello and welcome. Welcome to Quilt Conversations Live. I'm Geraldine Wilkins, the Living Water Quilter, and I enjoy helping confident beginners go from frustration to fabulous by helping them discover and develop machine quilting skills so that they can save time, save money, make more quilts for family, friends, or for their business. I just enjoy helping quilters. Today is a tote bag. It's going to be quilted, so we'll do a little bit of quilting, but we're also going to look at some sewing tips. And this is the tote bag. Hello, Jacqueline. How are you? So glad you're here. Awesome. Thank you for joining me here. We're going to go over this entire tote, this DIY, how to make it. It's a beginner friendly project with pro finishes. And on Amazon, right here, all on the bottom, just below this video, are all the tools that I've used to make this tote bag. That's right. So get your paper out, write down the supply list, or click and add it to your cart on Amazon so you have all the supplies that you need to make this tote. All right, let's get started. What do you need? First of all, you need a good sewing machine. And I use Janome. I use a Janome Memory Craft. I love this machine. It is a fantastic machine. I've had it for years. There's one on the carousel below. The features are fantastic for quilting, fantastic for sewing. It has a lot of features on it, decorative stitching. It has dual feed. Hey, Shirley, how are you? So glad you're here. Welcome. We are looking at a tote bag. Yes, this DIY tote. I'm going to show you everything about it, how I made it. And so if you're watching on YouTube, you're free to join me here on Amazon as well and get the supply list. Now, a good sewing machine. And so hey, hello, Rachel. Nice to have you here. Happy Prime Day. Yes. Awesome. Thank you for that, Rachel. So, a good sewing machine. We're going to go through the supplies and then we're going to look at some step-by-step on how this tote bag is put together. Let me tease you by showing you some of the nice features on this tote bag. Do that a little bit with the overhead camera. So we have some nice finishes, some nice stitching from our Janome machine. All this was stitched with the Janome. Look at this nice faux binding. Isn't that fabulous? Hey, Phyllis, how are you? I'm so glad you're here. Welcome. This is a faux binding technique. I'm going to show you how to do that. It's stitched all the way around, so it's reinforced. Then we have some nice reinforced leather-like paper. It's called Craft Text. We're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about the inside of the bag, those pro finishes that I mentioned. And all of this was sewn on the Janome sewing machine, the Memory Craft. Now, don't do what I did. And I started off with a small machine that really couldn't handle the amount of sewing that I do. This Memory Craft can handle everything. I've had mine for years. So here are our pro finishes. We have a nice finished edge, no raw edges. Everything has binding on it. I'm going to show you how that looks and works on the machine. All pro finishes. And then the top is bound too. So you're going to do this all in one step for your lining. You're going to quilt it at the same time that you quilt the exterior. All this was done on the Memory Craft. Okay. Now, I'm going to go back to this image. Do you notice how easily I can turn this in and out? And it's one of the things that I love for tote bags. I can take this tote bag and do this. That means this can go in the washing machine, right? I love things that we can make that can be washed and kept clean, right? So I can do that, and then guess what? It takes back, it bounces right back into its original shape. Is that fantastic? How is that happening? You're wondering, how does that work? And it can stand. It can stand on its own. I can hold it with my hand, and you can see that. Why does it hold its shape? That's another tip I want to share with you with this tote bag, what I use to make it be washable, but also bounce back into shape after it's washed. Love, love, love. So let's go through the supplies. All right. So what we also need, let's take a look at this machine. We need an extension table. If your machine, this is my memory craft, my Janome, if you don't have a big extension table, you can get one made. Many of the memory crafts come with an extension table, but if your machine doesn't have one, you can get one made for your machine. And so this is an extra, a large wish table by So Steady. It is a large extension table. If your sewing machine is not in a table so that it's flush with the table, I recommend getting an extension table so you have a nice big flat surface. So many Janomes already come with this, some don't. If yours does not, you can get this wish table that also comes with this tray to keep your supplies. I like having that option too. So that's on the supply list. A good sewing machine, a nice big flat surface to work with. I love having those things for my sewing projects. The next thing is that you're going to need some good needles. You're going to use some good needles. I like Smets needles. I just highlighted that in the carousel. And this is my goodie basket right here. Let me put this on my chair. So here in my supply basket, these are the supplies that we're going to go through today. Smets needles. Now, I love good quality needles. You need good quality needles. And I like to buy them in bulk. This is for a home sewing machine. That's what you see there with the number 130705. And that's the needle system. And the number here, it's an 80 needle. And so there's 100 needles in here. Save time, buy in bulk. Especially if it's a needle size that you use frequently, and this is one that I use frequently. I use this size for general sewing, okay? So you can buy in bulk. If you don't want to buy in bulk, you can get individual needles because you're going to need 80 size needles for sewing together the fabric. Then when we start to make the tote, we're going to need some heavier needles. And we're going to need probably a 100 or a 90-14. 116 or a 90-14 needle. And I have those here in my supply basket. I will highlight those in the carousel. That is the 100. This is a Superior Threads top stitch needle, 100, to go through those thicker seams when we make the tote bag. So you want an 80-12. And then you want a 114, or you want a 116 or a 90-14. Okay? So you need at least two needle sizes, one for sewing the fabric together and one for the construction of the tote bag. So for the construction of the tote, you want to have some heavier needles, some larger needles, 116 or a 90-14. Okay. All right. So those are our needles. Next, we want to look at thread. You want to pick thread for piecing and you want to pick thread for quilting. And I like connecting threads, 50 weight long staple cotton. I love this thread, multiple colors. Let's go to the overhead camera. So you can get a lot of colors to go with your project. You want to pick a neutral thread like a medium gray for your piecing, and then use a colored thread to match your fabric. So this is the Essentials Cotton by Connecting Threads, and it's a long staple 50 weight cotton, which goes with that 80-12 needle, right? Okay, so this is the thread that I like. And if you're watching on Amazon, you can get a nice bundle of these threads with different colors to suit most of your sewing projects. You save when you buy in bulk, right? So those are the threads. Then we're going to need some pins. We need pins that we need to put together the fabric for piecing. And I'm using these pins by Clover, the flower head pins. These are flower head pins, and there are multiple ways that we can pin our fabric together. You might have a preference, but here's the option. We want to sew these two together. We're going to put them right sides together. Then we want to pin. I like to pin at the top, and then I like to pin at the bottom. Then if I need something inside the middle, depending upon how big the piece is, I will put one in the middle. So generally, if I'm pinning for quilting, there's going to probably be a seam here once I start to add rows together. But this is how I start. Now, an alternative would be to pin in this direction so that you don't have to pull the pins out as you sew, because you don't want to sew over the pins. If you pin this direction, then you can leave the pin in and not have to pull it out while you're sewing. That is personal choice, how you want to pin. But if you pin in this direction, you want to pull that pin out before it hits the sewing machine. Okay? Two different ways to pin. You want to do that. Okay? So those are the pins. You're going to need some pins. And some other things that you can use that will help you in the sewing process of sewing together the exterior of the tote bag would be like a seam roller, a thread snipper. Let's see, where's my seam roller? Here it is. Here's my seam roller. So this is also by Clover. And by the way, my friends at Clover USA provided this for me. And I use this. We're going to see this in a demo, how I use this seam roller. It's called a roll and press. Whoops. A roll and press, so that you can press seams open or to one side. It includes some instructions on the inside. Make sure you read those. I like this for a number of reasons. This part here rolls, right? But also the ergonomics. You see that there? This is perfect for putting your finger right in, and so that you can apply pressure to roll. See how that just rests right inside there? That's well thought out. I like that. So you can use that. Let me highlight that in the carousel. So this is the Clover roll and press. And I like to use, hey Yolanda, so glad you're here. Welcome from North Carolina. Awesome. When you use this, you're going to use it by your sewing machine. So you can pre-press your seams before you take it to the iron. So that's another reason why I like this, to have a tool so I can press my seams. All right. So that is another tool. And remember I talked about how, let me get this tote bag. I made this faux binding I used a special tool on my sewing machine that allowed me to sew together this so that it would create this. It was a seam guide, and I'm going to show that to you as well. So that seam guide is also by Clover, and it is an amazing multi-purpose tool that you can use for a lot of things, a lot of sewing projects. Okay, I used it to help me create the straps for the tote bag, but you can also use it. It includes these two seam guides with a tacky film on the back so that you can place it right next to your sewing machine. Right, turn it on this side, and it does not leave a glue residue. No glue residue on this. You also get this handy, let's see, you're not going to be able to see that unless I do this here. Can you see the numbers on here? There is a guide with holes in it for your seam allowance. Love that. I'm going to show you a little video on how that works. So we're just going through the tools one by one, all right, so that you can see what I use to make the tote bag. Okay, it's that. And what is next? We need clips. Clips are amazing. When you don't use pins, clips are sometimes the better option, right? So we're going to use some Wonder clips, and we're going to use an iron, which you see right here. We're going to use this iron to do some pressing. So I think it's time to get started. I'm going to start showing you how this was assembled, but we need fabric. How do we got tools, but we need fabric. So let's look at our fabric choices. Now, this tote was made with a charm pack. A charm pack is a package of 5-inch squares. So here is the charm pack that I use, and you can use any charm pack. The one that I use is called Songbird. This is what it is, and a charm pack came with 42 different squares, and basically, if you've never heard of it, it is basically a sample pack of a fabric line, and you get multiple colors of the same pattern from that fabric line. That means everything in the charm pack was made to work together. You don't have to try and match because it's been already done for you in the design process. So here's an example. Let me show this to you. So here is one pattern with these leaves. Okay. Then here's that same pattern, but instead of a white background, we now have this gray background. And we're using a charm pack. I'm going to highlight a charm pack in the carousel on Amazon so that you can see. That's another Moda fabric. This is Moda fabric charm pack. This particular one is no longer available, but they have many here on Amazon that you can choose from. The benefit of a charm pack is that you have the fabric already pre-selected for you. It's all matched up because it's a collection. So here's an example with 3 that are the same pattern but different colors. Okay. All right, so this is the one that I used. Now, if you don't want to use a charm pack and you want to use yardage, yards of fabric, buy half a yard, a full yard, or you can use something larger like a fat quarter. And I like to use fat quarters. And I've highlighted a couple of them that are my favorites. My favorite fat quarter bundles are from Connecting Threads, and it's beautiful. You get this rainbow of colors that you always have fabric ready to go. So here's an example. These are beautiful fabrics that you can use. These are pastels, and these are fat quarters. 1/4 of a yard, 18 inches by 22 inches. Beautiful colors. Hello, Deneen. Nice to have you here, Deneen in Illinois. Awesome. Beautiful fabrics. You can get these at Connecting Threads. And what I like about this particular kind, this is the blender collection. These work with any fabric that you might have already in your home. If you want something to blend with existing fabric that you want to use with your tote bag, blenders are the way to go. I always have some blenders on hand. So there are 2 different types of blenders, color palettes in the carousel below. Check that out, see which one you prefer. But these are handy for all kinds of projects. And I love that it's just not a solid, it almost has this stone-like coloring on it, right? Okay, so that is one bundle. The other is Fat Quarters by Island Boutiques. If you love boutique fabrics, I love having a stash of Island Boutique fat quarters. Remember, fat quarter is 18 inches by 22 inches. When you look at the carousel below for that, you're only going to see one fabric, and it looks like it's just black. But when you click on it, you're going to see that there's more to it, okay? And more meaning that there's going to be a variety of colors. So you're going to see a variety of colors on the website for these boutique fabrics. And I love boutiques. There's no wrong or right side with boutique fabrics. Beautiful. So if you don't want to use a charm pack, but you want to get some nice, vibrant colors to play with, boutiques are really fun. And my friends at Island Boutique Fabric provided this fabric to me a couple years ago when I was an Island Boutique pattern designer and ambassador. So I love boutique fabrics. Let me take you to the site where you can see the Island Boutique fabrics. I want you to be able to see that. So here we go. When you click that link in the carousel on Amazon, hello, yes, Patty, those colors are vibrant. They are fantastic. I love vibrancy in my fabrics. So you're going to click on that link and it's going to take you to these different colors, right? You're just going to click on it and see what's available so that you can get some beautiful boutique fabrics, but different colors. Okay, now for the connecting threads, let's look at that. There is several blender collections for the connecting thread. This is one, and this is their faux linen. So it has like this linen texture look to it. And hey, CWC, thank you for following on Amazon. Let's look at another one. Here's another one. This has more blues, purples, and greens. And look at this one. Isn't that pretty? Let's click on that. Let's do a close-up. Oh, lovely, lovely colors. I love that. So I do want to make sure that you see that you have options when you're selecting for your tote bag. And often with these small projects, when you don't need a lot, you can use either your fabric scraps, you can use a charm pack, or you can use a fat quarter, smaller pieces of fabric, but that work well together. Now, if you're saying, I just want to do a charm pack like Miss Geraldine did, I want to use a charm pack. Matter of fact, I have one in my stash, or I've been spying one, and I want to use that one because all the fabrics are from one collection and they work together. The one that I highlighted in the carousel is called Happy Days. Let's take a look at that. This is the Happy Days Charm Pack. Are those colors gorgeous? They are beautiful. I like these colors. Very, very pretty floral pattern. This would go well for our tote bag. This is a charm pack, and a charm pack has 42 5-inch squares. 42 5-inch squares to mix and match. So you're going to play with that, right? So whether you're using yardage, say you decide that you want to use your fat quarters or yardage, you're going to just cut some 5-inch squares. And you're going to need 3 across, 3 across, 6 on one side, and then you're going to need 6 on the opposite side. Then you're going to need about a half a yard of one fabric for your straps. That's also the bottom of the bag. So the bottom is going to be a half a yard for the bottom section and for your 2 straps. And then also your binding along the edge of the tote. This is the binding. Then you're going to need fabric for the interior. You're going to need about 5/8, a little bit, not a quarter, not a half, a little bit more than that. I always like to have a little bit extra, right? You want to have enough to cover the entire section of your tote, okay? So that is your fabric. Lots to choose from. My fabric here is the Motor Grunge. That's what I use for my straps. Let's take a look. So this is the Motor Grunge fabric that I used here for the bottom and for the straps. Let's see. This is the Motor Grunge. I'll highlight that in the carousel. I love the grunge fabric. It comes in multiple colors. It looks solid, but it really isn't. It has kind of these highlights in. Can you see those gray highlights? So you would get, say, a blue or a pink, and it would have a lighter shade with some highlights in it. So I love that, right? Okay. So if you're thinking about fabric in the chat, let me know there on YouTube what fabric you are thinking about using for your tote bag. What fabric would you like to use? Okay. Now, remember I talked about how this is easily crumpled, but then it keeps its shape. Why does it keep its shape? For all my tote bags, I like to use foam. That's right, you heard me correctly. Foam, F-O-A-M, foam. We're going to use Soft and Stable by Annie. That's right, Soft and Stable by Annie. And what is that? Let's go to the overhead camera. I just highlighted it in the carousel. So, Soft and Stable by Annie. It's for bags and beyond. I love it. It's perfect for bags. You can get it in 2 colors, white or black, right? And it's foam. The black shows you the best. See this gray section? That is the foam, and the black is a fabric. There's fabric over the foam. And you can do this to it, crumple it up, and it will come back and bounce back into shape, just like that. That's what is in between those 5-inch squares and the lining. It is this foam. I love using foam for my tote bags. It helps to keep shape, and it's soft. It's soft and easy to use. Okay, you can get it in different sizes and different colors. You get it in black if you need black for dark fabrics, so that the white won't show through on, you don't want to use this on light fabrics because then this will show through on the light and vice versa, right? You want to use something that's going to blend with your dark fabrics and something that's going to blend with your white fabrics, your lighter fabrics. Now, there is another choice. Don't we love choices, right? So, another choice, and I'll highlight this in the carousel. This is another foam. It's called Bosal. It's a foam that is fusible. So foam fusible stabilizer, also for bags. And so this is it right here. It's a little bit thinner than the other one, but it works well. You use it for whatever use case you need. Now you won't be able to see the fuse on it, but I can feel it. This side is the fusible side. You want to make sure you use a sheet to protect your iron when you're going to adhere this to your fabric. One side is fusible, the other one isn't, okay? And it says it's soft, it's foam, it's easy to stitch, needle friendly. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm incorrect. This is double-sided fusible. I was wondering why it felt tacky on both sides. Yeah, this is double-sided. Forgive that misinformation there. Double-sided. Double-sided. Okay, so I love having that. That means you don't have to spray baste or pin when you have it double-sided fusible. Okay, so that's what I use in my tote bags. Now, getting to the making of the tote. Finally, we've gone through the supply list. We have our fabric, we have our foam, we have a good sewing machine that's in working order with the right size needle. We've selected our thread. Now we need to start to sew. Let's take a look at that. We already saw the extension table, and now we want to pin together our 5-inch squares. Remember the pin method that I talked about? I like to pin at the top and the bottom, and then I will gently place the fabric in and begin stitching. I do a little back stitch so it doesn't unravel because I know I'm going to quilt this, and so I need it to stay together. And then I pull out the pin, and then I will continue to chain stitch those squares together. And if I need to get the fabric to relax, I will use a stiletto. Do you see that stiletto? I'm going to see if I can stop this video so that you can see this stiletto. Let me pause it. Let's see. All right. I think I'm going to have to hide this in order to do it. Let me hide that first. And then I can, let's see, trying to get that right on when the stiletto's being used. It will not let me do that. I'm going to have to hide my welcome. Oh, and there, let me go back to the beginning and play that. All right, here we go. That's why I like having these B-roll videos so that I can rewind and go to the section that I want you to see. So there is the stiletto. Why am I incorporating that stiletto at this moment? Did you notice that the fabric was puckering a little bit right in front of the foot? I wanted to make sure that it was laying flat and it would not pleat. Remember, I only used 2 pins. I could have added more pins, but I didn't. So instead, I picked up the stiletto, right? And that's a stiletto by Clover. It has that gray tip that has a nice texture to it to grip the fabric. But you can use either end of the stiletto. See, now I'm using the pointed stiletto to help feed in gently the fabric. The feed dogs do the work. I was just getting the fabric to the feed dogs with the stiletto. So that is a good feature to look at. Let me show you what that stiletto looks like. All right, so here it is. It's by Clover. I'll highlight that in the carousel. Let's see. Where is that stiletto? Okay. I know you're in here. All right. Did I put you at the end? No. Go way back to the beginning. All right, thread, needles, pins, roller. Okay, folks, I think I may have not added the stiletto. Let me do that right now because I want you to have access to that. All right. My YouTube friends, thank you for waiting patiently. All right. Here we go. All right. Return to the live stream. Here we go. Hello, Stefan. Thank you for following. Welcome. Welcome to Amazon Live Prime Day. All right. It's called the Hold It Precision Stiletto. And this is it. It has this nice rubber tip, right? And then this section is angled. You can use this at your sewing machine or with an iron. That's right, either or. And so I like this one because this end, it will grip the fabric. And then if you need a precision spot you want to hold in place, this nice point will do the job, right? Either end. This is the precision stiletto. So let's go back to that section there where it was, let's see, there we go. You can see it in action. I like having tools that help me. See how I'm gently pushing the fabric in just to get it to the feed dogs. You don't have to shove it in. Just gently lead the fabric until it makes contact with the feed dogs. That's why this stiletto works well for that, this pointed end. Okay. Next, after we've pieced all those squares, right? We're piecing those 5-inch squares together. We're making the front of the tote bag. Now we need to cut in between each of those pieces. Let me backtrack a little bit. Go over here. All right, right there. You see that? That is another good tool for cutting in between chain piecing. If you're a chain piecer, let us know in the chat. Do you chain piece one group of fabric one after another? When you do that, you have some thread in between those two pieces that you need to cut. And this is a quick cut thread cutter. Say that 3 times fast. Quick cut thread cutter by Clover. So watch it in action. Here we go. So I'm able to cut the thread right in between those pieces of fabric that I sewed one right after the other. Let's take a look in the overhead camera how this works. So here it is. It is the quick cut thread cutter. The blade is right in here, and guess what? It's a rotary blade, and it's easy to change out. I love that. It has 12 positions. Can you see that? There are numbers on there, and you change the blade position, 12 different positions, by just turning that one click. That's position number 2. When you want to change out the blade, instead of going clockwise to change the blade position, you're going to go counterclockwise to remove that. Now you're ready to change out the blade. All you have to do is squeeze this on both sides, and now the blade is exposed so that you can change out the blade. Easy peasy, right? When you're done, you just put it right back in. It snaps into place. And because you have to turn it, clockwise to get it back into place. You just wait for it to fall into the groove, which it just did, right? You don't have to force it. It's easy to do. You see those 2 holes there? You just put this in until it falls in. Once it falls in, like it just did, you're going to turn it clockwise, right? Now it's locked into place. And you can change your blade position to a sharp position to cut your thread. This is a cute little thread cutter. Easy to have by your sewing machine, which you saw in the video, right? So you saw it in action. Let me get it right here. That's the last one. And now you're going to see the thread cutter in action again. There you go. Easy, easy. Let me go back to the thread cutter. Sometimes I forget to highlight it in the carousel. And if you're watching, just let me know if you can't find it in the carousel. Where is it? Here we go. That is the Clover Quick Cut Thread Cutter. Now I'm using the roll and press. The roll and press. The roll and press allows me to press my seams before I go to the iron, right at the sewing machine. That's why I'm pressing my seams open, and I can do that easily. Now, I fast forwarded the video so that you can not have to watch me press every seam, right? So I'm pressing very easily with this press and roll. That's the Clover roll and press, I should say, not press and roll. It's roll and then press. Roll and then press. All right. Love these tools that help us do what we need to do. All right. So now that you've seen that, what is next? We are going to put those into a completed top for our tote. And that means we have to sew rows together. And how do you pin your rows? I start at the top, I pin the top, and I pin the bottom. Then I pin at each seam where the seams are going to overlap so that my seams will match when I'm done. So top and bottom, then the seams, and then in between the seams. That is how I pin. That's my pinning order. Top, bottom, when I'm putting rows together. Then I pin the seams so I can match the seams. Then I pin in between the seams. Just like you see here, I just sew each side after pinning. And again, I'm not stitching over the pins. I'm removing the pins before they get to the needle. You want to make sure that you do that. There again, you see the roll and press. I'm using it to pre-press my seams before I take it to my iron. And I'm pressing both sides with the roll and press. Okay, see that? Easily done. Okay, all done before I take it. With an iron, I'm going to be able to press that nice and flat. But to be able to do this at the machine before I take it to the iron, it's ready to go. Okay, so remember I talked about the seam guide. Let's look at that. I'm going to highlight that in the carousel. Here is the seam guide. This is the stitch guide that allows you to create seam allowances with different sizes. You can use these guides to help you create that accurate seam allowance. You use the holes in the guide, you put your needle down into that hole, so then you put the seam guide right next to the edge of that guide. Once you're done, you raise the needle, take the guide out, and now I just did a 1/4 inch seam allowance with the seam guide, and I put the guides in place, and now I stitched a perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance. You can use it for multiple sizes. Matter of fact, let's take a look how many sizes are on here. We have a 1/4 inch seam allowance, 1/2 inch, 3/4, 1 inch. And you see there, I just checked to see, did I have an accurate 1/4 inch? There are multiple sizes that you can create with this seam guide. I love having this option. So multiple uses for that seam guide, right? Okay, so let's move on to the strap. This is how I made this faux piping. I used 2 different sizes for the strap. 3-inch wide, and then, was it 3-inch and then 2.5 inch, I think. Let me double check. I'm going to check this, but I use again that guide from Clover to help me stitch a nice consistent 1/4 inch on a very long strip of fabric. So my straps are 2 inches, so that means 2.5 for the gray and 2 inches for the burgundy. That's how you make that faux binding. You always take away 1/2 inch from one strip so that you can, that looks like at least an inch, I think. 1 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch. Yes, so it's an inch. So one is 2 inches and one is, so that's 2, and then this is 1.5, so that must have been 2. Yeah. Yeah. So 1 inch difference between your strips will give you that faux binding. So no matter what size you make. So the bigger one is going to be your binding color, your faux piping color. So the gray is my faux piping color. That's going to be the larger strip. The burgundy is the accent in the middle. So it's going to be the narrow strip. It's going to be 1 inch smaller than the gray. And having those 2 guides on either side made sure I stitched those accurately. Easy peasy, right? Okay. So once we get that done, we have to go back to our tote top. We want to quilt it to the foam, to our foam, whether it's the Bosal foam or the soft and stable. You want to quilt it directly to the foam. And that's what you see there. I'm using a walking foot to do that. I'll highlight the foam again. You can see that white foam is the soft and stable. So once that is done, you are going to have to press it. You see how all those stitches are gathering that fabric? And I'm doing some gentle curves so that I have a nice wavy look in my tote bag. You've sewn all the squares together, you've put in some fabric in the middle, and now you are doing a walking foot quilting, and you're putting foam in the middle of your lining fabric, which is the burgundy you see there, and the top, which is the exterior of the tote, that's the other side. You see that it was done with a walking foot to put that foam in the middle. One big piece of fabric that has a top with patchwork and a lining on the bottom that's burgundy, and in the middle we have foam in the middle. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions about how this was made. This was one piece of fabric that was sewn on the side. So here's our 6 on this side, 6 on this side, and then those 2 were sewn together with one piece of fabric in the middle. Okay. All right. What is next? Next is the pressing. After you do all that quilting, you want to relax those stitches. And I use my new Aliso iron. I have it in that beautiful teal color, that Aliso iron, and I'm using steam. You want to use steam to relax those stitches, and you want to do that before you trim. You want to press before you trim. That will help it to be square, because remember, all that stitching, you see how tight the stitching is? That is pulling the fabric together. And this is a Prime Day deal, ladies. If you were waiting to get this Pro Iron, it is on sale. It's 30% off. The Prime deal is 30% off. It's one of those irons that you do not have to stand upright. It has an automatic feature that allows it to raise and lower just by touching. It's called an eye touch feature. You touch it, it lowers, and you start to press. When you let go, it raises the iron off the fabric, and you're good to go. Easy, 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 right? I love this iron. All right, so now it's ready to be trimmed, and I'm using one of my favorite cutting tools for that, and that is a rotary cutter and a nice large cutting ruler. That is the 8.5 by 24-inch cutting ruler. It's this ruler by Creative Grids. I love this ruler. It allows me to trim large pieces easily. You're going to line up the lines on the ruler with the seam allowance, right? Now I'm taking out my Clover clips, my Wonder clips, so that I can match up the seams along the sides. You see how I'm using it to match up the seams so that I can sew the sides together? I'm going to use Wonder clips to hold it together so that I can take it to the sewing machine. Wonder clips are a great alternative to using pins. You can have two sizes. There's the jumbo size, which is what you see now. This is the jumbo clip. Or you can use the regular size. Either size is going to work. I like to use both sizes of the Wonder clips. Fantastic for sewing projects, easy to use, and you can get a bag. The container has the smaller clips and the bag has the jumbo size clips. So just to recap, I'm using my Creative Grids ruler to trim with a rotary cutter, 45mm rotary cutter. I've already pressed this so that I can get nice straight cuts. It's laying nice and flat. And this is now going to be ready to become a tote bag, right? I'm trimming it so that I can sew the sides together. There is the start of that tote bag, right? This is this tote bag right here. I'm using Wonder clips so that I can sew it together. It's going to hold it together. I can match up my seams instead of using pins, right? And there are two types of Wonder clips, and you're going to use these Wonder clips over and over and over again. All right, two different sizes, the regular size and then the jumbo size. Now, once we've done that, we need to pin the straps to the tote before we sew the sides together. So here are the straps, all made, and I also use Soft and Stable in the straps. And I'm pinning the straps. I'm using the seams as a guide to pin. And do you notice that the straps have a little gap right there in the bottom of the bag. We're going to fix that. We're going to use some craft text for that. So I'm pinning the bottom, right? I'm using pins. Those are the heart pins. And you want to make sure that you are pinning to hold it nice and straight with the seams. I'm also going to use one of my favorite rulers, which is the Creative Grids Quick Trim Ruler. And I'm going to mark for the X that I need to stitch on the straps. And I'm using the seams in the construction of the bag to help me do that marking along with the ruler. So that is the Creative Grids Quick Trim. It's 12.5 inches by 3.5 inches, 3.5 wide by 12 inches. And you see I just did some X's so that I can stitch the strap. There's the X right here that I need to stitch with a square, and I'm pre-marking that with a chalk pencil. Then once that's done, I'm bringing in my wonder clips, yes, the large ones, to hold it in place for when I need to stitch. See that? There are the wonder clips at the top and the bottom on both sides of the strap. All right, I'm going to go down here so that you can see it. There are those wonder clips, the large ones. And you're going to need the large ones. You see how far they have to reach to hold the strap together? The large ones were ideal for this. You could not use the smaller ones. You needed to use the large to hold the strap in place. You want to make sure that when you put the strap in, it stays straight. You don't want it to tilt one way or the other, right? You want this to stay straight. Let's look at the overhead camera so you know what I'm talking about. When you're putting in those clips, look how far the strap is from the edge. You want to keep that in place because you're going to stitch, right? You don't want to have pins in the way. You want to stitch this X. And I used this chalk pencil. Let me highlight that in the carousel. Okay, so you can get the chalk pencil in multiple colors. It comes with these different colors. You put the color that you need so that you can see it in the fabric, and you're going to mark that X so that you can stitch that. And I stitch the square and the X at least twice, if not 3 times. Okay, and I'm using this to mark it along with my ruler. And I know how far I want it to be from the edge. Mark that. I know how big I want it to be from here to here. Right? Let's go on this side. You can see how big that square is. So from here to here, it's about 1.5 inches, 1 3/4 inches, and then from corner to corner, you're marking that. And you're just going to use your walking foot. Now this is starting to get thick. You want to change out your needle. You want at least a 90-14, if not a 116 needle to go through all these layers. Okay? Make sure that you're using a needle size that's going to be able to go through all these layers. We have 2 layers of fabric, front, the back, we have the foam, and now we have this strap that also has the foam in it. So that is a lot of layers. You need a heavier needle to do that. Okay? Make sure you change that out. We go from making the top with our regular 80 needle. Now we're doing the bag construction. For bag construction, you're putting on the strap, you're putting in different things like this craft text patch, you want a heavier needle. Okay. Now, hello, Benita. How are you? So glad you're here. Awesome. So we pressed this before we trimmed it. We put the straps on. We've sewn that. Let me show you how it was. Let's see, sewn together. I did that. There's the marking that I mentioned, right? How I marked it. There are those X's. And now I'm taking those Wonder clips and I am making sure that I can hold that strap in place. The Clover clips there. All right, and I'm going to stitch down that piping to hold it in place. Now, you may notice that I changed my mind. You see how the burgundy is on the outside of this video clip? I changed my mind and I put the gray on the outside. I pinned it, marked it, and then I changed my mind. A girl has a right to change her mind, right? Did you notice that in the chat? Let us know. Did you notice that I changed it? It's still the same strap. I just changed it from one side to the other. Okay? I decided to put the burgundy on the inside and the gray on the outside. Okay, so now that, and there it is, you see how I changed it? Let me stop that for a minute. I'm going to hide that, and then let's see. This is really getting in the way. This is a little frustrating here. All right, there we go. I'll bring that back and bring that back, and I can stop it up here. Here we go. So there you see my rotary cutter, right? My rotary cutter has a special blade on it. It's a pinking blade. And I'm using that pinking blade so that I can have a nice wavy edge on the bottom of the craft text. And you're probably saying, well, what is craft text? Craft text is a paper product that is rugged, that can be sewn, that can be dyed, that can be stitched. It's like that patch on the back of your jeans. You know how you can wash your jeans over and over again, and that patch on the back, Levi patch, it doesn't wear out because even though it's paper, craft text is like that. So I'm going to highlight that in the carousel so that you can see what that is. You can get a sample pack. And that sample pack would look something like this here. Let's go to the overhead camera. So this is what I used. I used Masala. That's the color I used. But you get a sample pack with multiple colors. Now, you see how it looks like it's leather, but it's really paper. But it's rugged. This craft text is rugged, rugged, rugged. You can stitch it. You can dye it. This is hand dyed, designer dyed collection. Hand dyed and pre-washed. See, you can wash it, right? And you can stitch through it. Now, it is paper. So once you stitch a hole in it, it's permanent. You want to make sure you're using the right size needle and thread to make sure you fill that hole with the right thickness thread, okay? I love this because this creates a little extra protection on the spot that gets worn. We put our bags on the floor, on the table, on concrete, on different things, and this little patch gets more of the wear and tear than the fabric. Just this little patch. It's not big. I could have made it the full bottom. That's your choice on how big you make this protective patch with the craft text. I decided just to make a little small patch. Sometimes you put feet on the bottom of totes, but I put this craft text on the bottom. Okay, so let's go back to the strap section there. So there it is. I put that side. I changed my mind, right? Now I want to use the gray side. There is the craft text that I cut with the pinking bladed, and I'm going to use the clips again to hold the craft text in place. The larger clips work better, right, to hold the craft text in place. Again, I'm going to stitch all the way around those straps. You can see again how I marked those X and those squares that I'm going to stitch. Everything is now ready for me to stitch. The clip is in place. It's holding the strap so that it doesn't shift while I'm stitching. And now I'm stitching exactly inside, right? And then making my X. I drew the X, I drew the square, and I could just have to follow the line. It's just that easy, right? Follow the line and just turn it as needed. And remember, I said I'm stitching multiple times over that X. And there goes my clip holding the strap in place. By now that I have the X in there, it's not going to shift. I could remove the clip if I want to, right? Once I go over that X and that square multiple times, now I'm going to stitch straight down in the seam of the strap, and it's going to be attached to the tote itself. Now I'm coming to the craft text, and I'm going to stop it here for a moment because I did speed it up for time's sake, but with the craft text, you don't want to stitch too small, because remember, it is paper. If you have a stitch length that is too small, basically you're creating perforations and it's just going to tear apart. So you need at least a 2.8 to 3 millimeter stitch length. You don't want to go anything smaller than 2, really. 2 millimeters. You want to go higher, 2.2, 2.5. My minimum is 2.5. Anything lower than that, you're taking a chance. All right? Tip for today. You need that. Okay, so now I'm doing an X here, and I'm just winging it on this one. I didn't mark it with a pencil or anything. I'm just lining it up because it's small, and it's the bottom of the bag. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? Now I continue to stitch down that strap. Now I'm on the other side, and I'm going to do my X, right? Do my X. Make sure I'm stitching that in place, keeping it nice and straight. And I'm using on my machine is a walking foot, but it's really a dual feed. It has teeth on the bottom, the feed dogs, but on the top it has a mechanism to help feed everything together. Okay, I hope you're getting all this. It's a lot to take in. This is this tote bag in process. All the different tools and techniques that I use to create this tote bag. One step at a time. You gather your tools, you pick your fabric, you get the clips, your rotary cutter, you get the right thread and needles, get everything in place, okay? This will be on a replay so you can watch this again, right? So from here, now we want to look at, we did the strap, we need to do those pro finishes. So what are the pro finishes? I want to remind you what they are. I'm going to go to my overhead camera. So instead of a loose binding, we use this backing fabric that was on the back when we quilted it as our lining. So when we did that, we would have raw edges. We won't have a lining to cover raw edges that could have been stitched with a serger, but I didn't do that. Instead, I put binding along the edge. There's binding along the edge, and you can use any fabric that you want. I used one that was exactly the same, and you decide what fabric you want on the inside. That's totally up to you. But this is a simple way to create a nice finish on the inside of your tote without having to do the extra step of a lining. All right, so how do you do that? Let's take a look. Once the sides are stitched, now we want to cover that, and we're going to use a strip of fabric that we need to sew on top. Did I skip a step here? Let me see. Yeah, there we go. So we put the strip on top. There we go. And then we're going to stitch that strip down. Once we're going to put some clips on to hold it in place, and we're going to stitch that right to the top. And we're going to do that a little bit outside of the initial seam allowance. We don't want to stitch a new seam on our bag, right? So we're going to do that, and once we stitch that strip on top, all we have to do is turn it over, fold it in half, and then fold it over that raw edge, and then stitch right on top. You see, I'm using clips. I'm using the regular Clover Wonder clips to hold that in place. Once that is in place, I'm ready to stitch that binding closed to finish off that raw edge. Wonder clips. They are a wonder, right? We can use it for so many things, and I love it for this project. There you go. You see how I was able to do that right at my machine. I didn't have to do multiple things. I just had to put that strip on, put the clips, do that first initial strip of sewing it to the edge and then folding it over. Now, of course, you can use any of the Wonder clips to do that, the large or the regular size. So you're going to do that to both sides first. Because after you do that, you want to now box the corners of the tote. We've stitched it. You see it right there. Both sides are finished. We have a nice finish along the edge. So we're doing both sides, this side and this side, before we do our box corner. So now we want to box the corner. And when we box the corner, that gives depth to the bag. How do we do that? Let's see. First, we're going to go here. We're going to use this handy tool. What is that tool, you're saying? This is a hot hammer by Clover. A hot hammer by Clover. Let's go to the overhead camera. This hot hammer can be used for pressing, but also you can use it for a quick way to box a corner. You see, it's already has the measurements. You have 1 2 inches this way, 1 2 inches that way, so that you can box a corner. Let's go back to the video so you can see. So you see there, I'm going to lay that along the edge of the tote. That's where I want to box. I want to box that corner. Now I'm using my chalk pencil to mark that square. I don't have to measure. The measuring is already in this hot hammer. And I'm marking that, and then I'm going to cut that off. Now let me highlight that in the carousel. I'm always forgetting that. Let me go back one, stop here. All right, let's look at where's that hot hammer in the carousel. For those of you who are watching on Amazon, Hello to my friends on YouTube. You're kind of quiet over there. I guess you're just taking it in. Let's see. Where is that? 1, 2, 1, 2. There we go. Did I not? Now, of course, I prepared ahead of time, but you know what? We always forget something, don't we? Let me see if I can now add this. I like the ability to do that when I'm streaming here on Amazon, because if you have a question about a particular tool, I can always look for it and find it for you. It makes it easy to add it to the stream when we have that option. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the stream, and then here we go. I'm going to highlight it for you. Here it is. It is 25% off. That's this hammer that you see there. All right, let's continue that. We're marking it so that we can create our box corners. So this hot hammer can be used for multiple things. And I'm going to demonstrate it later on, how to use this for pressing. Actually, I'm going to do that tomorrow. Some demonstrations on how to use this. So now I'm taking my scissors and I'm cutting that square off. And once it's cut, now we're going to box the corners by sewing that closed. And we're going to make sure it's lined up accurately. And then guess what we're going to use? We're going to use our clips again. We need to use our clips. Those clips, we've been using them over and over and over again, right? They are fantastic. I love the clips. Easy, easy, easier than pins. And you see I have clips on both sides, and I'm ready to go to the sewing machine. These are the regular size clips that you see. Handy, handy. Pick those up if you haven't already. I love these clips. All right, so now we're going to sew those, bring it straight to the machine, sew those corners so that we have a nice boxed corner, just like you see here. Boxed corner with a binding. We're going to add a binding to it, right? We have to sew it together, but then we need to finish it off with our pro finish. First, we sew it closed, and then we're going to add a binding to that so it's a nice finish. So right there, you see me stitching back and forth to make sure I have a nice closed box corner. Now, I already added my strip of fabric so that I can finish off this. We don't want any raw edges in the bag. So there you see the fabric. Now I'm just folding it over once and then folding it right over that raw edge. And I'm going to trim off that excess fabric. I brought it to my cutting table so I could trim off the excess fabric, and also so that you can see. I said, you know what, I need to shoot a video on this, so let me take it to the cutting table and shoot a little video so that you can see how this is done. Taking that clip, and I am folding the edges in and over, and I'm going to add another clip on the end, and then one in the middle. I'm going to do that on both sides so that I can take it to the sewing machine and finish off the binding. So there you go. That's our pro finish. We have a beautiful finish on the interior of the bag. No raw edges. Wonder clips are fantastic. You want to use these clips. We use them over and over again in this project. All right, so that is for the box corners. Let me go back to the overhead camera. So you just saw that I finished these box corners with some binding. The sides already have the binding, and we use clips for both instances. All done. Now we need to add a binding around the top of the tote. And we're going to do it in a similar fashion, right? But before we do that, I want you to notice that, see how this is so thick right here? Our needle's going to have a hard time going through that. So I changed out my needle for a 100 needle. If you're just joining me in the carousel, I talked about some of the tools. And one of the tools was having 3 different size needles, an 80, 12 for general sewing, for sewing the fabric for the exterior of the tote first, but you're going to also need something to go through all these layers. But even before that, I use a special tool to flatten this out so that when I take it to the machine, I won't have a hard time going through that thickness. When we're constructing a bag, we need the right tools to be able to finish it off, right? So what did I use? I used, let's see, let's go here. All right, so here it is. It's finished. We have to put the top binding on. The bag is almost done, almost done. And I'm going to turn it right side out so that you can see. And then we're going to add a binding to the top. And that binding color can be any color you want. I decided to keep it the same as the strap color and the bottom of the bag. Okay. There goes the craft text on the bottom. Right? Okay. Let's see. Did I have pressing in this section? I'm not sure. I don't remember. Let me take a look. Yep, there you go with the binding. You just take a strip of fabric. I use the same gray that's in the strap. Right, so here is the sewing on of the top binding. Now, when I did the binding for the interior, I used 1 layer of fabric. Here, I did it the same way that I use binding on a quilt. I used 2 layers. It's folded over, folded in half. So there's 2 layers of fabric here on the top for the top binding, the top of this tote. But inside, it's only 1 layer going over the raw edge. This has 2 layers of fabric going over the raw edge. 2 layers. I folded it in half the same way I would put binding on a quilt. Okay? You see how I'm coming to that thick area and I'm hand cranking. I'm just making sure that I don't bend the needle. Whenever you get to a thick area, you want to hand crank to test and see if that needle struggles to go through that thickness. Now, I thought I had another video where I showed you how I was using a mallet. When you have thick areas like that that you need to go through, you can also press that down, right? And hit it with a mallet. That's right, to flatten out those seams. Put it on the floor, put some fabric or towel on the floor, then put whatever it is you need to flatten and hit that to flatten that seam as much as possible. That foam will flatten out if you hit it a few times. I know it seems kind of extreme, but that's what I use. And it works. It works, it works, it works. So again, there goes those trusty clips again, right? Now I'm turning it over. It's been closed. And now I need to turn that over and sew it in place. But before I do that, you need to press. You need to press that over. so that it will lay nice and flat and neat. There it is. Okay, I thought I had it. There goes my mallet. I am pressing down, hammering down that thick area in the seam allowance so that when I take it to the sewing machine, the needle's not going to have a hard time going through all those layers. And then I'm taking my smaller iron. This smaller iron is fantastic for getting in tight spaces. This is the Aliso iron. It is the small mini pro iron. Just highlighted that in the carousel. It gets into those really tight spots. And the bigger iron was hard to use. And so I was glad to have this little mini iron to go in there to not only press this top binding so that it's nice and flat all the way around, and it gives a nice neat finish. When you press in between steps, you get a neat finish. So you want to make sure you're pressing in between steps. And this allowed me to do that. So I'm pressing that, getting it ready to fold over and stitch down. And so I use that mallet to flatten those bulky seams. I'm using an iron on the top and on the inside to make sure that it's gonna look nice and neat and easy to stitch close when I bring it back to my machine. And once that's done, I can sew that closed. So here it is, sewn closed. And what I did is that I used a special foot. I used this foot that has a guide. It's called a ditch foot. See that? It's a ditch foot. I'll go back to the beginning of the carousel. This is an AccuFeed ditch foot, which allows me to line up this guide. Here it is. See that blade? That blade I'm lining up with the seam so that when I stitch, it's going to hit right along the edge. And that's what I want. I want it to hit along the edge of the binding to catch. And how do I do that? When I'm stitching on the top, that blade is right against the edge of the binding. That allows me to get very close to the edge to finish that off. This is one of those extra things that when you need it, right? You don't want to guess and miss not stitching in that area. So that's why I like to use this AccuFeed, this extra ditch foot. It comes in handy for multiple things. Okay. What else are we going to look at? Okay, there we go. So we've gone through pretty much everything in the carousel on how to make this bag. We used a lot of different tools that help the stitching process for stitching together these 5-inch squares, how to create this faux piping on the strap. I showed you how I did that with a seam guide. I also showed you how I put this extra patch on the bottom. So many tips. If you're just joining me and you're wondering, what is she talking about? This is a DIY tote with all the tools, the fabric, the sewing machine, and the extra things that make it easy to make this tote bag. This grab and go tote bag with pro finishes. It is a beginner project if you take it step by step. And I used a lot of tools to help me make it easy. And I share all of those tools right here in the carousel. So if you just joined me, watch the replay so that you can see some of the techniques I used. Now, What are some of the Prime Day deals from this project? One is the Aliso iron. If you missed that one, that was used in this step here. After you quilt the tote, you need to press it to relax all the stitching. And so I use the Aliso iron. And that is a Prime Day deal. If you're on YouTube and you're not here on Amazon, get the Aliso iron because it is a super deal. It's normally a $1.99 and now it is $1.59 if I can find it in the carousel. Where is it? Where is it? Here we go, $1.59. So it's 30% off. It's an iTouch iron that has special pro features like the iTouch, which is when you touch the iron, it will lower so you can press. When you release the iron, it raises off the fabric. You can use it in a vertical position as well as the horizontal. So if you need to steam curtains, for instance, you can use that vertical position for steaming irons or for steaming a coat or a jacket or a dress. It's a pro iron with a special, sole plate specifically for professional ironing. But you can use it in your home. That is going to be up to you how you use it. Here's mine right here. So that is a Prime Day deal. What else is a Prime Day deal that's in my carousel? Let's see. The mini iron, the mini project iron is also a Prime Day deal. Let me show you this one up close. I'll highlight that in the carousel. I want to make sure that you take advantage of these deals. This is 26% off. Let's go to the overhead camera. This is your on and off dial. This is where you use for the steam. It's aerodynamic. It's made for the palm of your hand, just like that. And it rests in this position. You don't stand this up vertically. It always is in a horizontal position. It comes with this special cover so that when you are not ironing, you turn it over and you rest it on this side. When you're going to rest for more than a few minutes, you want to change it from the highest setting to a lower setting. You have these holes to release some of the heat so that you won't burn your fabric, but you don't want to put it on the highest setting for a long period of time. You want to make sure you change it. This is for your steam, and this is your well for your water. So you're going to put water right inside here, and there is a limit, and then you close that. When it's ready, this is the off position. There's a light here that flashes. When it's ready, it's solid, and then you have your water level to check right there. So I love this. It's a great iron. It's fantastic. And guess what? Right here, we have two different voltages. We can use 120 and 220. So two settings. It's a good travel iron. Good travel iron. This is a Prime Day deal you don't want to miss. When you're done, you let it cool off. Here's the sole plate. Beautiful sole plate. And what's nice is that you don't have holes right here. Sometimes we don't want steam holes on parts of our fabric. Having a nice smooth area at the bottom allows you to not have those steam holes. When it's cool and you're done, you just put it right back into this cover and it's ready for storing. Let me see if I can get this on this side. There we go. And then you just hold it like this and it's ready to be stored. You're good to go. You just put it on a clip and you are done. Okay. So I think because I showed this one to you, I think I should show you the other one that's on Prime deal, and that is the Aliso Pro 1800. Let me show that one to you as well, because it's the, I'm sorry, the 1600, not 1800, 16. Let's look at that one. All right, so this is the Aliso Pro 16 Smart Iron. There's the Smart Iron right there. This is the mechanism that opens, comes out so that it can raise the sole plate off of the fabric. You have fantastic features here for steam, for no steam, different steam levels. This is the highest steam level. All the way to the other side is no steam. Here you can press for extra steam, and then here you can press for water. This is your indicator. When it's flashing green, it means it's warming up. When it's solid green, that means it's temperature ready based on the setting that you put on the front of the iron. If it's red, that means it's not ready. And then here is where you're going to put in your water, right there. And you have a maximum water level. So I like that feature. And when you unplug, you want to make sure that you take your hand off of the iron, because when you do, these come out. These come out so that the sole plate is not resting on your fabric. So you take your hand off, the iron will raise, then you turn it off and unplug. If you hold the iron and unplug it, the iron is going to be touching the fabric. That means it will continue to heat up in that spot because the iron is still hot. So it comes with instructions to tell you how to do that. It's really simple. It's just one feature that you have to remember, is to always remove your hand, then unplug, because you want the sole plate to be off the surface. You want this out and this out. This is what keeps the sole plate from touching the fabric when it's not being used. You can turn off, you can decide to use this as a steam iron, right? And steam your curtains vertically, right? This sole plate, it says it's diamond ceramic flow sole plate. Very smooth. It's a pro iron. Again, we don't have a lot of holes here to leave hole marks in your fabric or indentations, right? This is a fantastic, smart iron with multiple steam settings. Love this iron. This is one of my favorites. It's my second smart iron. I've had one before, and I'm a professional quilter, so I'm using my iron all the time. It's good for home use and for sewing and quilting. You decide how you're going to use it. Well, I think that's it for today. I've gone through everything inside my project basket here with all my tools. If you have any questions, let me know. Other than that, I'm going to sign off. Thank you for joining me for Quilt Conversations Live. I'm Geraldine Wilkins, the Living Water Quilter, and I was happy to share with you how you can make your own mini tote bag. That's right. Easy peasy. If you're just joining me, just watch the replay. All the supplies are below. I show you tips and techniques for making this tote bag easily with the fabric you have, or to use yardage, pre-cuts, tips on tools to make the sewing and construction of the tote easy. All right, Thank you again. I'm Geraldine Wilkins, and I'm signing off. I'll be back. Yes, I'll be back at 9 p.m. to talk about some of my favorite cutting rulers. I have a lot of cutting rulers for very specific tasks that help the sewing and quilting process. Um, it helps it make it easier. That's what it does. Having the right tool for the job is so important. So I love sharing tools and techniques on YouTube, on Amazon, anywhere, even in person. So that's just what I love to do. I love to help confident beginners go from frustration to fabulous so that they can discover and develop machine quilting skills, so that they can save time, they can save money, so that they can make more quilts for friends, for family, and even for their business. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, Patty. You are welcome. I'm so glad that this was helpful, that you've learned a lot. Oh, you'll be back. Wonderful. Is this your first time joining the live session? I'm so glad that you were able to join. I'll be back here on Amazon. I won't be on YouTube, but I'll be on Amazon at 9 p.m. tonight talking about my favorite cutting rulers. So come over. Oh, fantastic. I'm so glad. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up and to follow. Hit the subscribe button. If you're watching on Amazon, hit that follow button so that you can be reminded when I go live, because I love to share these tips and techniques to help you in your sewing and quilting journey. I want you to be successful. And part of success is having the right tools. And so that's what this has been about. Tools. Yes, I use the tote bag, right? Okay, you're going to tell your sewing buddies. Fantastic. Yay! I'm so glad. Quilt Conversations Live, by the way, is live Fridays on the first Friday of the month and the third Friday. So the first Friday and the third Friday of the month. So I'm going to be live for Quilt Conversations Live on Friday, the first Friday of the month, and the third Friday. And the third Friday is this week. So hopefully you can join us then, Patty. I would love to have you come back. This was kind of a surprise. I didn't even know I was going to go live until a couple of days ago. I planned to go live only on Amazon, but I said, why leave my YouTube friends out? So that's why I'm here on both Amazon and YouTube sharing with you tips that you can use not only for this tote, but these were sewing tips that you can use for any project. So if you have a question, don't hesitate to ask. You can leave a comment, ask a question on YouTube if you have a question about anything I shared tonight. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you hopefully 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for my favorite fabric cutting rulers for sewing and quilting. I'll see you then. I'm Geraldine Wilkins, the Living Water Quilter. Oh, hello, Overreader. Thank you for following. Awesome. Thank you. Did you have a question before I sign off? I just saw you hit the follow button. I don't want to leave and not answer your question. If not, I'll see you at 9. All right. No question. I'll give you a few minutes before I sign off. All right. All right. A couple more minutes. No, a couple more seconds. All right. Okay, Patty, you're going to join me. Wow, awesome. All right. I'm going to take a break and going to reset my room, get everything ready for the 9 o'clock live session. So you just have to come over to amazon.com/live/livingwaterquilter. And that's how you'll be able to find me on Amazon. You're okay? All right, great. Thank you. I'll see you then.